Well, the haters gonna hate, and the faker's gonna fake, baby. I'm just gonna make, making luck, a Dominion podcast.
Yeah, speaking of moms, somebody on the Dominion Discord was talking today about how their mom plays Dominion, and she's 70 years old, and she's, like, close to level 50.
Wow.
And so, like...
That's awesome. She's way better than my mom.
No, I was just saying... No, like, that made me so happy for reasons I just can't really articulate, that there's a 70-year-old woman out there who's, like... That's above average, by the way.
She's higher than me on the leaderboard.
Like, the average level on Dominion is, like, 42 to 45.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That seems really high.
That's the median of active accounts. I'm talking about only... I took everything of, like, games... You have to have played 50 games on this account to count. But of that, the median's, like, 42. So, like, there's a 70-year-old woman out there who's an above-average Dominion player. And that just, like, that made me kind of giddy. Like, I just really...
Like, what's her name? I'll friend her and I'll try to play her.
I have no idea, but that's just, like, amazing. Like, if
she's probably hilarious, too.
Like, if she's listening to this, shout out and... It's like, it reminds me of, if you follow the competitive FPS scene, there is this group of, like, professional Counter-Strike players who go by the name the Silver Snipers, and they're all, like, 65-year-old dudes who just get on and own a bunch of teenagers at FPS games. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Welcome to Making Luck, an FPS podcast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would not be the person to come to for that. I love FPS games. I'm terrible at them.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So, we're back. It's a real episode. We're doing it.
Yeah.
After 4 minisodes.
Adam let me back out.
After 4 minisodes, after me not really sleeping, after changing many diapers, we're back. We're ready to talk about some Dominion.
Yeah.
It's gonna be something because I still haven't really been sleeping through the night. So,
all right.
It's been fun.
Yeah. You may remember last time, way back when, years ago, decades even, we did an episode
like
on...
55 shuffles ago.
Yeah, 55 shuffles ago. We did an episode on Margrave and Tragic Hero, and we took... about a week to play it out. About a week? Yeah. So we've had some time with this kingdom, yeah?
Yeah,
where we've gotten to play with it a little bit, and we're going to... It was a few episodes ago, but last time, do you remember about what we said we were going to do on this kingdom?
Well, I think what we said we're going to do is read it first.
Right.
So,
that is what... We do that first, don't we? Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, it's been a while.
Yeah, we're coming back.
This is going to be a pretty special episode. Okay?
Yeah, right. We're getting back into the groove, but yeah.
So, let's... I'll read this one.
Sure, man.
So, we had City Quarter, Encampment with Plunder, Catapult with Rocks, Hermit, Conspirator, Crown, Margrave, Tragic Hero, Witch, Grand Market. We had Traveling Fair, and there were, technically, Platinum and Colony.
Nice.
One more time for our audio-only listeners. City Quarter, Encampment with Plunder, Catapult with Rocks, Hermit, Conspirator, Crown, Margrave, Tragic Hero, Witch, Grand Market, Traveling Fair, and Platinum with Colony.
Now, if you recall, Adam and I had some disagreements about how we were going to handle this kingdom. I thought that Tragic Hero was going to be huge, that it
would be better than Margrave.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be better than Margrave. I think you want both, but you get to crown the Tragic Heroes, and you're going to skip Grand Market, and you're going to skip Conspirator, and you're going to be using City Quarters and Tragic Heroes to have this mega turn with crowns and platinums, and it's going to be great. And Adam thought that the Margraves are going to be so important that in terms of like the discard attack and establishing tempo and things like that, that it's not really going to matter exactly what you do once you get ahead, because you're not going to lose your lead. Yeah? Is that
I think I might have said, it was a while ago, I might have said something to the effect of the fact that it stays in your deck was relevant.
Sure.
Which doesn't quite hold, but whatever.
Now, the important thing to remember here is that we were both really, really wrong for different reasons.
I wouldn't say we were wrong.
That stuff doesn't matter.
Yeah, I would just plead no contest. It doesn't matter.
Because this game gets decided way before you get to that point. Now, don't get me wrong. If you play this kingdom out, like, those things might lead you to winning the game later.
Theoretically, you could get to a point where you're, at that point, building your deck and actually even. But we played, like, 15 to 20 games, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, the thing is, this game gets decided before that by a completely different card. And that card is Catapult.
Curse. Catapult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The discard attack from Catapult is characteristically oppressive in the opener, just because it's a discard attack that both players can open with, and it's a discard attack that thins your deck as well, so it's something, or doesn't thin your deck and makes the attack happen. So it's an oppressive card in the open, and it's actually pretty hard to hit 5 here.
Can be. I found the main way of hitting 5 to be just like getting a bunch of encampments and maybe a madman and just drawing a buttload of cards, in spite of the fact that you're going to be having 3-card hands a lot of the time. Just try and draw 5 coppers and hit Witch.
Well, right, and that's the other thing. The other reason that this stuff...
Don't hit Witch. I'm sorry. Hit 5 and buy a Witch.
Yeah,
at Making Luck, we don't
witches.
Advocate domestic violence of any time.
Especially not toward people who can curse you with black magic. But
or any kind of magic.
Right, or just
hashtag me too.
Hitting people is bad. So you buy a Witch, and that's another reason that the difference between Tragic Hero and Margrave doesn't matter a whole lot, because because we get to this first phase of the game that revolves around the discard attack from Catapult and coming back from that, and then we get to the second phase of the game where you're throwing junk at each other with witches, and your really only way of dealing with that is the Hermits and the Catapults, both of which are bad at doing that. And you're trying to thin your deck in the meantime, and it's not happening because your opponent's cursing you as you're doing it. And then we get to this third phase of the game where somebody hits 5 while they already have a Witch in their deck. And they either buy a Crown or a Margrave.
And they buy like a couple of City Quarters, but then after that...
Well, no, like the thing is you probably put a City Quarter in your deck before that point, right?
Sure.
Because you don't have to hit 5 to get it. And
at some point you're ready to like buy another card.
And which card is that? It doesn't matter, because one person has kind of
win no matter what.
One person has effectively won the game by that point.
But I'm going to say it's Margrave. There you go.
I think he was usually crowned for you, right?
It was crowned once.
It was
Margrave
crown the
like
Witch
twice or something.
Yeah,
it
so
depends.
so this was interesting. Balancing whether or not you have a Hermit in your deck, balancing whether or not you have a Madman in your deck, balancing how many plunders you have, and are you attacking your opponent with Catapult every turn, which you need to be doing. It's kind of a priority to attack your opponent.
Yeah.
Because if your opponent starts with a 5-card hand, they kind of have a huge advantage on you, because
really
you're probably not.
5 is like so many cards.
Yeah,
it's like 55 cards.
Yeah, this there's this term you may hear thrown around when people talk about games and game theory called like a zero-sum game, which is where you only get some kind of resource or tempo when you take it from somebody else, and where their new resources and tempo are not created, they're just taken, moved from person to person. And this was kind of a zero-sum game. Like, once you only really make progress here by harming your opponent, and vice versa. So there's really no traction to be gained, except it's very clear who's ahead at any given time, and usually it's resignable. But
well, I'm not gonna say that it's resignable, but you know,
yeah,
there were many resignations. If you want to see Jake resign like 15 games against me,
the other
you can
thing
watch
is
the video.
The other thing was this wasn't a particularly pleasant game to play out for reasons that we described. So it was also like, and we were testing things, and there's not really a reason to play it out at a certain point. So like, you know, it's
over now.
Yeah. If you were arguing about this kingdom as well, if you were playing this out, I hope maybe you've discovered too that none of it matters, because
because we're all gonna die anyway.
Right,
so what's the point?
And Catapult's gonna hit you every turn and curses, and it's a sticky kingdom.
Sticky.
Yeah.
I would call something like this hot garbage.
Yes, hot, sticky garbage.
I was just gonna go with hot garbage. But,
yeah, sure.
But
It's
Jake
probably
wants,
sticky too.
Jake wants his hot garbage to be sticky.
I don't want it, man. It just is.
You know, I gotta tell you, if I'm thinking of garbage, I'm thinking
Yeah.
of what takes up a lot of landfill space, and it's disposable diapers, and those are probably going to be sticky, especially when they get warm.
Thank you for that, but
For the record, we're using cloth diapers, and it's not because I like the environment. Because screw the environment, I like money. Well, I mean, the environment's cool too, I guess.
yeah, I mean,
I was just being facetious.
money
when I said
comes
that.
from the environment, so
Yeah, it's true.
yeah. So this week's episode is on Menagerie. So we are going to be talking about the card Menagerie. We're going to be talking about a little bit when it's good, what it does, and what kind of hoops you jump through to enable it, and the timing of all of it, and how to optimally play with that card.
Yeah, it's going to be so good. You want to read some card text to me, brah?
Yeah, sure. So Menagerie is a 3-cost action from the Cornucopia expansion, and it says, +1 action, reveal your hand. If the revealed cards are all different names, +3 cards. Otherwise, +1 card. So just to interpret that, it's a non-terminal, and if you reveal it and you have duplicates in your hand, it's just a cantrip, you draw a card. But if you reveal it and your hand is all uniques, you draw 3 cards, and that's amazing.
This is known in the trade as Menagio no Dupos. And I know you're not listening to this podcast, but if you are, shout-outs. Anyway.
Yeah, that reference went over my head too. So I've got, if anybody knows what he's talking about, leave a comment in the...
I believe only 2 people besides myself are going to understand what that is, and I don't think they're going to listen. But you know what? I'm going to send a message and be like, hey, you need to listen to episode 47 of Making Luck. Also, Mission Control, can you read? Anyway, so this card, it's great. It's cantrip, but it's really popular. I think this is one of the most popular cards in the game.
Yeah,
I love it.
Nobody dislikes the card, and there are a few reasons for that.
If you don't like Menagerie, get out. Stop listening to the podcast. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, actually, I think you told me when I was first learning the game, like, if you don't like Menagerie, you don't like Dominion.
Huh.
And...
Did I say that? That's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, this was a while ago. We were still using the word engine. I was like, yeah, well, Menagerie goes really well in engines. And you were like, yeah, you don't like Dominion. It was a little weird. And then you glared at me. You told me to leave. But anyway.
I told you to go yourself.
Yeah. Just was like, by the way, my name's Jake. So...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how we met, and now we have a podcast.
Yeah, so...
So anyway, Menagerie, it's super fun, and I think that, I remember the first time I read the card, actually.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, Donald's running out of ideas, it's the Cornucopia expansion, he's now forcing you to have differently named things, because nothing else is there, and, I mean, obviously that's garbage. But, like, I've seen other games that force you to have unique things, and... For a while, I thought, like, this is just a cop-out. Like, it's gonna force you to try and have fun by doing this different thing, by forcing you to have unique stuff. And then I realized that, like...
Forcing you to have fun is what a game is supposed to do?
Yeah, that's not a cop-out.
Right.
That's just the game being fun.
Yeah.
And, like, it's giving you a new perspective on everything that you've like, learned or decided, have a mental model in your head about.
Yeah, I mean...
Menagerie's great.
The idea that this card rewards you for interacting with the rest of the kingdom, that it necessarily does that, makes it a kind of a very safe way to design a really good card. And if that makes any sense, it's like, it's hard to go wrong with anything that rewards you for interacting with the rest of the pieces of the game. That applies to Dominion, it applies to most other games, and it applies to life.
Yeah. Just like life. If you don't leave the house, you're going to be sad. Yeah.
Well, and you'll notice
Menagerie.
that that has been deemed a pretty successful mechanical theme because it's been repeated in other expansions too. You see Nocturne repeated that a lot with like how
there's
Imp and Conclave and things of that nature. So this is clearly a pretty popular way to play Dominion, and so part of it's just because it's fun.
Yeah, it's it's super fun, and as a play tester, one of the metrics I use for measuring the success of a card is how interactive it is. I don't want it to be cultist. I don't want it to be just if you do something other than buy cultists and play money, you're going to just lose. I don't like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I like cards to be interactive. Like everything other than cultist, I think. Yeah.
Well, Son of Onto kind of has that problem too, to a different degree. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so yeah, you
get this fresh feeling, and a lot of times you will play your turns, you'll contort your turns around activating your menageries. So there's this paradigm of, you play your villages and your non-terminals first, and you try and draw cards early on in your turn if you have the option. And Menagerie kind of breaks that, because you're going to do everything you can to play around the idea that I want to activate as many of my menageries as possible.
Right, and that comes down to playing your turn out in a way to just have as many cards in your hand as possible, which is something that Menagerie will do better than really any other card, because if a card said +1 action, +3 cards, and it costs 3, well, that would be
that's really good.
Amazingly broken card, and you'd be able to draw your whole deck, and it would be trivial. And sometimes it is with Menagerie.
Sometimes
because
it is,
we're jumping through these hoops and contorting to do it.
Right, and so I think that a lot of the things we're going to do in the rest of this episode are comparisons to Draw to X decks. There's actually an episode on them. Menagerie kind of sort of fits that mold, and we're going to make some references to it. We'll do a summary at the end, but I want you to just be aware of that. And then before we move on, just one final little note, a little rules nitpick in case this is something that's never come across to you before. So, like, you can have 2 menageries in hand, and it's okay because you can play one of them, and if you have a menagerie and the rest of your cards are unique in hand, it still works because the menagerie you played is no longer in your hand when it tells you to reveal your hand and then check to see if you have any duplicates. So you can have 2 menages, but everything else has to be unique.
Yeah. Now, the other thing, before we launch into some of the hows and the whys of Menagerie, we have spent some time talking about how good it is and how really powerful it is to be able to get this effect. But it has these 2 modes. Yeah, there's this mode where you play it it's successful. It draws the 3 cards. That's what you put it in the deck to do.
No dupos, yeah.
And then there's the fail Menagerie where you play it, and then it doesn't hurt you, but you just drew cards, so that's not great. But when do you put the Menagerie in the deck? I think that you do it not necessarily at the point where you're guaranteed to be able to draw 3 cards, but you put the Menagerie in the deck when you have a chance, a decent shot at being able to draw 3 cards with it.
I think that's the latest that you should start putting Menageries in the deck. And I think there are a decent number of arguments for putting it in your deck even sooner than that.
Sure.
But, you know, as they come up during the episode, I can point them out.
Well, yeah, and one of the ones is for sure that because this is a non-terminal card that has a generically useful effect, it's kind of logically follows that often it gets split. Often the pile depletes and you're worried about how many you ended up with. So, yeah, sometimes if that's the case, you certainly want to hop on those early.
That would be one of the main reasons why I would get a Menage without thinking, the first time I play this, I'm going to hit the Menage no dupos.
Right.
Yeah.
So, not to put the Menagerie before the horse carriage, I don't know if that made any sense.
Horse traders.
Right.
The Royal Horse Traders carriage.
It's important to talk, I think, a little bit about what playing with Menagerie looks like. Yeah, like, what are good situations for this card?
What do you mean?
Just how do you enable Menagerie?
Oh, yeah, okay. So I think the thing at the top of the list for me is copper trashing.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to have a hand of 5 cards and have them be like at least 4 different things when you have 7 coppers in your deck to start off with, and that is 70% of your deck.
Right. And that is one of the biggest reasons. By the way, don't open Menagerie. I have seen people do it.
Jake, what if you're playing the 7 heirlooms and 3 shelters game? Can I open Menagerie now?
I don't know that I quite understood what you said, but I can kind of intuit. And no,
really?
I don't know. I mean, I've never.
I feel like you should open triple Menagerie and get a curse and a silver with it. Like, go nuts, man.
I've never played that game, but I believe
me neither.
So, Yeah, so copper trashing is definitely at the top of the list because the idea that you're going to be able to draw 3 cards with the Menagerie and have 7 coppers in your deck is pretty, I want to say, delusional. But
Well, this isn't a card this isn't Leprechaun. You're not getting hexed with diluted or anything.
right, but you're hexing yourself in real life if you think that you are going to open with a Menagerie and it's going to do anything good for you.
For sure. I mean, I think at the beginning of the game, when 70% of your deck is coppers, like you actually kind of have to do really weird stuff to even theoretically trigger your Menagerie the way you want. When you have more cards in your deck, when you have like maybe 20, 25 cards in your deck, even if you're just playing with, playing a big money strategy or just getting a lot of silvers and golds and stuff, like
Right.
you can get a Menagerie and it'll work. That's a thing that can happen.
Right, now just because it's possible for a Menagerie to go off doesn't mean that Menagerie was the best choice to put in your deck,
Yeah.
though. Always do remember that.
Did you know that silver is a really good card?
Right, Menagerie does count at the opportunity cost of a silver, so like bear in mind, like if you're playing toward the big money or the money density paradigm, the Menagerie doesn't help that really.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, the big way that you're going to need to look to enable Menagerie is by thinning your deck, and especially thinning those coppers.
Yeah, I think estate trashing matters, right?
Yeah.
But copper trashing matters more because 7 is more than 3.
Yeah.
Making
Pro
luck
tip.
a math podcast.
That's not math, though. It's just arithmetic. That's just counting, yeah.
I would say that you can observe that 7 is greater than 3 by inspection, which is something that in my higher level math classes I would use as a line in proofs to say, I don't feel like justifying this and it seems really simple, so I'm just going to put by inspection, which means you just look at it and you're like, yep, that's it. So yeah,
So,
for me, that's math.
I'm
By the
gonna-
way,
I'm going to take my liberal arts degree and defer to what Adam just said because I didn't really quite understand it, but...
most of the time, the paper grader did not let that fly, just for the record.
Cool.
That didn't stop me from doing it.
So-
Because at a certain point, you've already spent 10 hours on a math assignment that was only 3 problems, and you're just done.
Yeah, totally. So, just like with Menagerie, how you sometimes use it to recover from discard attacks.
Yeah, that's exactly the same thing.
Right. So that's the other big thing. Like, there are times when maybe you don't have the copper trashing that you need. Maybe you don't have any at all, or maybe it's really weak. But you still can get Menagerie, and it's a valid choice because you're getting to line it up by being attacked by your opponent with like a Militia or a Margrave.
Or Margrave, that'll do it right there.
Yeah.
It's really easy to get your Menageo no dupos with a 3-card hand, because all you have to do is keep a Menagerie and then 2 other cards that are different, and like one of them could be another Menagerie.
Right.
That still works. So
Yeah.
like I'm just revealing 2 cards, and it's not hard to have 2 different cards in my hand.
Now, one thing I think it's worth stressing here is that doesn't mean that you like came out ahead on that scenario. The Menagerie helped you recover from the attack for sure, but
Yeah.
you would have rather not been attacked.
After you-
Usually.
After you play the Menagerie, you have 5 cards in hand in 1 action. You're just back where you started.
Right.
So you had to have the Menagerie. You had to keep 2 different cards because maybe you wanted to keep 2 golds. I don't know.
Sure.
So like sometimes draw to X, like Library, will make you very happy that you got hit by a Militia because you discard your 2 worst cards and then you draw up to 7 and then
Right.
life is good.
And it's like a free filtering effect.
Yeah. Menagerie does not give you quite the same like hard counter status. It
Yeah.
more is just like
And even
defending.
And even in those cases where like you are getting the hard counter status, like with draw to X, like you're still usually inconvenienced. Like sometimes it helps you, but it's more likely to harm you being attacked by a little bit at least. It's just not as annoying as it would be. So
Some people don't get to start every single hand with a library in it.
right, and why is that important at all? Because the advice is still to pick up Menagerie, but. It's important because you're probably still picking up the attack in that
Yep.
game too.
That's
Because
it.
like Menagerie is good at recovering from these discard attacks, but it doesn't outright counter them. So definitely consider that, but also consider doing the attacking yourself.
Yeah. That's true of many things in Dominion.
Yeah.
There are 2 good things you can do, and one of them kind of counters the other. just do them both. It's fine. Like, just it's okay.
The world is your oyster.
The world is your dominion. The dominion is your oyster.
So you could also look at cantrips.
Yeah, like
as,
other non-terminals I think are really good with Menagerie.
Yeah, and why is that?
Well, because if I'm trying to activate my Menagerie, and let's say that I have a bunch of markets in my deck.
Sure.
It doesn't matter if I have 10 markets like it did that I had 7 coppers.
Sure.
Or maybe 7 markets, just because it's aesthetically pleasing for it to be the same number. If I have 7 markets in my deck, I can still activate my Menageries, because I just play markets until I only have 1 market left. And that's fine.
Now, I do want to stress about that particular situation as a Menagerie enabler, is that also is contingent on what we mentioned previously about having the junk trashing or the copper trashing, because it doesn't matter whether or not you have non-terminals in your deck if the cantrips are then drawing things that you'll have duplicates of. So, of course,
that's true.
Whereas these other tips kind of enable Menagerie on their own, that one is kind of a supplemental enabler. It's contingent on being able to thin the coppers.
Yeah, that's true. The coppers were particularly bad because most of the time you draw 2 coppers and like your Menageries are dead for the rest of the turn. You have no hope, well, and you're just gonna like shed a single manly tear every time you place your Menagerie on the table and say "sad Menage" and reveal your coppers to your opponent.
Yeah,
and he's gonna laugh at you.
He is, and it's not going to be great for your self-esteem. Now, dead, they're not. I mean, they're not
sad.
They're not doing anything for you, but they're not dead because they're at least cantrips. Don't get me wrong; they could have been something that would have actually helped your deck. So they're dead in the sense that they're not creating any value for the turn. But
maybe they're just like it's raining and they're not like doing backflips and tricks for you,
right?
Like the animals in the Menagerie,
right?
Is that coming through?
They're not like dead like your ancestors are dead. They're dead like your
spirits,
like your mom might be dead inside because she didn't get to pursue her dreams because she had you. But it's like that. So
why would you say something like that to me?
Not you in particular. Just like all of us.
Says the guy who doesn't plan to have any kids.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So anyway,
right.
I mean, I can have a deck that doesn't have many cards in it, and I can draw the crap out of that deck with Menagerie. But non-terminals help give me something to do that doesn't get in the way of my Menagerie. And I want to put a special shout out to cantrips, because like the market in this case is much better than something like a candlestick maker, for example.
Yeah.
Because, like, yes, I understand, the candlestick maker reduces my hand size, and then the Menagerie increases the hand size. And that's just swell. Bully for Menagerie.
I wonder if Adam knows when he's doing the voices. Like, does he do that consciously? Or is that just something that happens?
I don't know. You should talk to my wife about that. It would be a great opportunity for the two of you to bond over making fun of me.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. But anyway, like, I the point I'm trying to make is, and this also applies to draw to X decks, because this is, a similarity there. The cantrip is definitely much better for the deck than the non-terminal that, quote, disappears. And why do you suppose that is, Jake?
Because it can help you find your Menageries. Remember, the general principle of these deck control cards is that it's really... The best case scenario is that they're in your hand at the start of your turn. And failing that, at least you want the capacity to get them in your hand at the start of your turn. So something that draws a card is going to be better than something that doesn't for Menagerie, because it'll help you find your Menageries, or maybe even your discard from hand tools, which is the next enabler that we're going to talk about.
And so it's really easy for people to... I mean, I've run into a situation a lot where, like, I have 2 provinces in hand and 2 coppers in hand, and I just know I'm not going to have a very good turn. And so if there's some way to get one of those duplicate cards out of your hand, then doing that can save your turn. And you can actually run a deck that uses Menagerie as its main source of draw and have duplicate cards in it and not be totally screwed.
Sure, totally. Now, at this point, we are going to talk about how you can use the benefits of things that let you discard from your hand in order to draw with Menagerie. There is a caveat I really want to stress with that, and me making this point becomes inspired by myself observing people making what I think are mistakes and building bad decks. Using discard from hand to draw cards with Menagerie is not inherently helpful. That doesn't buy... Just because you got Menagerie to draw extra cards, if you discarded cards in the process, that's not necessarily helping you. So when you're going to try to build around this kind of thing, make sure you have a plan. What key cards are you actually trying to play more of? What are you trying to use your Menageries to search for in your deck? Like, is it maybe a Traveler or an attack that you want to play a lot of, or some kind of payload that's better than treasures? The thing is, like, this doesn't work so well if your payload is just treasures, being able to discard and then draw with Menagerie. There are easier ways to get to a certain number of dollars.
You could buy silver.
Right, that's a great way to do
yeah.
it. So the guy who is playing a dungeon and then a warehouse, and then he plays his Menagerie to draw 3 cards, and then he hits 3, just enough to buy another Menagerie. That guy's not really getting anywhere necessarily, unless he has some card that he wants to play. So please don't be that guy who builds the deck around enabling Menagerie without a plan as to what he wants to do once he's been drawing and discarding these cards. And that's just a soapbox I want to get on before we get into things that have you discarding cards from your hand.
Yeah, like you have to be getting something for it.
Yeah.
Like, Warehouse is something that by itself can help you enable the Menageries, but that's all it's doing, right? You kind of need to be doing something else. If I'm looking at cards like, Oasis or something, like I'm getting $1. Dollars are great. Everyone loves dollars. Right,
and the point is either the card that you draw off the Menagerie, which is some important thing that we talked about, or it's the $1 that you got from the Oasis, or the other discard benefits that we're going to get into.
Yeah, so a lot of these are non-terminals, because, we talked about non-terminals. It makes your life a lot easier. I should make a point now, I guess, while I'm on it, that, like, you can use terminals, but, with the same kind of thing that happens with Draw to X decks, you're going to need villages, you're going to need a lot of villages, or else you're going to be stuck with your 2 goons in hand, and oops, I didn't find a village yet, so all my Menageries are sad, and then I shed a manly tear. I mean, we've already been there. So, like...
Yeah, shed a lot of tears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's... If you're not crying while you're playing Dominion, then you're doing it wrong. Wait, that doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm usually just crying all the time, so...
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell when, Right. So anyway, you want to get duplicate cards out of your hand. So, like, there are different ways to do that. Like, yes, you can discard them, and that's super great. I think the stars of the show for discarding from hand are Artificers at the top of the list.
Yeah, especially because that one rewards you for having this increased hand size from Menagerie and then using it to enable something and getting a benefit, which is the point of this was to get the benefit, and then that enables another Menagerie play so you can keep on getting value out of your turn.
Yeah, so Artificer gets a special place because, first of all, you can discard exactly the cards you want. There's no restriction on the flavor of card you discard. There's no restriction on the number of cards you can discard. You can discard precisely what you want, and no more and no less if that's a thing you want to do. And then also, it's really good at gaining Menageries and putting them on top of your deck that you can then, like, draw and immediately play and draw a bunch of cards, right?
Yeah, or just topped up them for next turn.
Yeah.
Because... So, again, control cards are really good to have at the beginning of your turn.
Yeah, so, like, Artificer is filling a lot of the roles that Menagerie really, really likes to have.
Yeah.
So that's why it's at the top of the list.
Sure.
The other thing that's up there is Hamlet, because you get to discard up to 2 particular things. And also Hamlet is a village, which Menagerie really likes, because I mentioned that before.
Yeah, and it's also plus buy, and because the thing is that, like... It's not that you never go for Menagerie in these boards that'll have these. The point is to just do single gains and get provinces as quickly as you can. But a lot of the time, you're going to find that Menagerie really wants to capitalize on some kind of increased payload, like plus buy, just because,
It takes a while to build it up. You got to do a lot of trashing.
Yeah, the whole theme of this episode is that we're talking about the hoops that you jump through for Menagerie. When you're just trying to hit a certain price point and buy a certain card, one of it, there's usually an easier way than jumping through these hoops that we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. So I
So plus buy is good, is the what I was
for
kind of
sure,
getting at with that.
and it's the same thing with draw to X decks.
Yeah.
So more similarities here. A couple other things you can do to get cards out of your hand. Trashing, I think, gets a special mention. I mean, obviously, like, you can mill a province, right? You can trash a province, gain a province. Maybe that's something that you're doing.
We're talking about, like, with Butcher or Remodel or something like that.
Yeah, that's a great way to get multiple provinces out of your hand, or down to one province in hand. Keep your turn alive. Also, I think the coppers get a special benefit. Because this could be another reason to pick up your Menagerie before you have all the coppers out, or enough coppers, because you can just trash a copper and then play a Menagerie.
That's not to say, oh, I trashed a copper, I've got 6 left, time to get a Menagerie. No, it's
right.
like when you're down to like 3 or 4, maybe you think about it.
Or you have like multiple copies of that trasher. So
sure.
I'm thinking of like something along the lines of Forager.
Yeah, I was just getting Forager was what I thought of too.
Yeah, that's the big one there. It's great at finding the duplicate card in your hand, a copper that you don't want 6 of, and maybe I only have 2 of them in my hand at a time, but I have 2 or 3 Foragers in the deck, so I'm likely to draw it all together.
Yeah, totally.
So like I would pick up a Menagerie a little bit earlier on to give myself the chance of drawing a hand like that, for example. Yeah. Even though in the abstract I have 5 coppers and my deck is 12 cards, it's really unlikely, but it could still happen in that kind of context.
Yeah, for sure.
There's also top decking. So like I play a Courtyard, and woo, I have a duplicate. I can put it on top of my deck. But like if I have 2 provinces and I just top deck a province and I play a Menagerie, I just drew the province again, and I still have this problem, right? And
right.
The problem is exacerbated by the fact that a lot of these things that allow you to top deck mid-turn are terminal actions.
Sure.
And that's really rough to put in this deck because of the aforementioned villaginess.
Yeah.
I think the big exception to that is Secret Passage, right? Because that's non-terminal.
Yeah, Secret Passage and Menagerie can be pretty good together for that reason, yeah.
I think the main use case for something like this is if I have 3 Menageries in hand.
Yeah.
Because kicking the Menagerie to the top of the deck there is actually really good. Because I have 2, I play it, I get my Menagerie no dupos, and now I have 2 Menageries in hand, provided I don't draw another one from the next few cards. And that's exactly what I want. I feel really good about my life when I have 2 Menages, 1 of everything else, and then I can play 1, and my turn is going to continue, and I'm going to prosper and all of these things.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah, prosperity. But this is from Cornucopia.
That's fine.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So, like, all of this, we made a lot of these comparisons to draw to X decks.
Yeah, and that's because Menagerie plays in a lot of ways like a draw to X card.
Yeah. So, you want to just, like, run down the list of all the ways that this is really similar to draw to X decks?
Sounds good to me. What else would we do?
Okay. So, the similarities start here. So, like, you can think of it like draw to X, but X is the number of unique cards that you can expect to have in your hand, and then plus, like, maybe 1 because you play, like, a Menage or 2 after that or something.
Sure.
So you contort your turns around maximizing the draw you get from the card.
Yeah.
If I'm playing a deck with Library, I'm going to try and play a whole bunch of cards and then play my Library to draw as many cards as possible.
Right.
And, the same kind of build that you want to do, lots of villages to allow you to play enough of your terminals so that you can maximize the usefulness of your draw. I've said that a few times. Also, the weaknesses of the deck. It has issues with getting green cards and staying consistent without, like, strong trashing.
Right, and honestly, even being consistent in the first place, a lot of the time, now, you can make your Menageries consistent if you have the tools to do it, but a lot of the time, even where Menagerie is a good idea to put in the deck, you can't necessarily rely on it to draw for you every turn because of just how things happen to work out, similar to a draw to X card.
You have to draw your Menageries, and if there are any duplicates in your deck, you better hope you don't get screwed by that. And then you put the 3rd province in the deck, and you just can't do anything anymore.
Sure, and of course, we have talked a little bit already about what the best time is to put the Menagerie into the deck, but I think this is a good time to come back to that because, we're talking about how to build a deck and run a deck that has Menagerie. You usually, by the time you're putting the Menageries in is around when you've got a decent shot of getting it to draw the 3 cards at least most of the time.
At least maybe some of the time, maybe barring edge cases. Yeah, something like that.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what he said.
Yep.
I'm also, if I'm looking for more similarities to draw to X decks, I'm looking for stuff like virtual payload.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Virtual payload is basically any payload that happens in your action phase, or maybe more specifically, any payload that happens and then you can play action cards afterward.
Yeah,
so,
any payload that can disappear from your hand.
Or like go into play is really what I'm thinking of. I can play it, and then after I play that, I can play a Menagerie, because now all this payload is no longer in my hand, it's in play, I got the benefit of good times.
Yay!
So using treasures is really difficult, because it's really hard to play a Menagerie after you play treasures. You need, like, Villa and Black Market. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult to do that. I mean, storyteller, yay!
Oh, you got me!
Yeah, that's not very good, because you're drawing a bunch of cards too, and then some of them might be treasures that you... Anyway, doesn't matter.
Good time.
So,
right, so you want to have a lot of villages in this kind of deck if that's available, although a lot of those other draw to X style cards tend to be terminal. That wouldn't work without a village anyway. Menagerie is non-terminal, so we're starting to get in a little bit of a fuzzy area. But, I mean, without those villages, you do start to close the door on those terminal types of support cards that you would like to have. Like, you put a storeroom in the deck, and you're going to have a pretty good time if you have enough villages to get some use out of that and keep a Menage or two in your life.
Yeah, definitely.
And, the discard for benefit, converting those cards into other resources, that gets a lot less bad in draw to X decks.
Yeah, for sure. That's when you can get the cards back. Like, Draw to X, you've talked about before as being a fairly weak archetype of deck to build for most of the time.
I mean, you're going to hear, if you listen to other Dominion content besides Making Luck,
which,
a Dominion podcast.
Why would you do that?
Right. If you do that, though,
yeah.
And those people maybe talk about Draw to X, I think it's pretty common that they're going to talk pretty highly of it, and I think it's, in general, pretty overrated. I think it's pretty weak. I think if there's anything you can do that isn't Draw to X that puts cards in your hand, you should do that. Just like having all of your cards in your hand is so good, and it's so much better than Draw to X.
Yeah, I mean, like, the Draw to X archetype has a lot of weaknesses. It's inconsistent. It's often very difficult to... It's also difficult to pilot in terms of, like, knowing what you need to discard and when, and redrawing things. And a lot of the time, difficulty to pilot isn't compensated for by it being more powerful, like other things might be. So the Draw to X is usually a fairly weak archetype of deck, but Menagerie has a lot of the synergies and the power of the Draw to X archetype without having a lot of the pitfalls and the issues.
Yeah, so I think we can start talking about how Menagerie is different from these types of decks.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. You go first.
No, you go first.
Okay, so I would say that Draw to X decks, if I'm going to look to build a Draw to X deck, I would say that those types of draw don't really play nice with other sources of draw. So I'm not going to put Library and Smithy in the same deck. Right?
Yeah, right. Or Cursed Village and Wharf, like from that one example where we did a Wharf episode. We decided that it turned out that Wharf turned out not to be that great of a card for the deck because we were relying on draw with Cursed Village. So Draw to X and other sources of draw, they don't play nice.
Yeah, they don't have the same objective.
Yeah.
Wharf's objective is to put all the cards in your hand, and Cursed Village objective is to put 6 of the cards in your hand.
Right.
So I think, but Menagerie breaks that rule.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of times you can build a deck that has other sources of draw, and you can splash in a couple of Menages, and those Menageries, they're going to hit and they're going to give you a little boost.
Yeah.
And they're great for that deck.
Right, and the other thing that comes down to Menagerie being different from these Draw to X cards is that it's a very low investment or risk to put in the deck because it's so cheap and it's non-terminal. So even in this situation where you are maybe failing to draw with it because you had these other sources of draw, it was at least a cantrip and it came at a low opportunity cost.
Yeah, it's not like you put this card in your deck that's now just sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah, it's
Like-
not. It's not like you played a library and your opponent, played a governor last turn, so you drew cards, and now your library sucks.
Yeah, I hate it when that happens.
Yeah,
It's just the pits, man.
yeah, right,
Why'd you put a library in that deck?
right.
So anyway,
Anyway,
and also I want to point out that a lot of these draw to X decks, they don't like treasures at all. But the first copy of every treasure that's in your Menagerie deck, it really doesn't hurt all that much.
the first copy of every stop card, really.
Every card.
Yeah, so a lot of the time you think about as you're building your deck, you think about your stop card capacity, or you think about you draw your deck but just barely. So you think about adding payload versus adding things that'll help you keep drawing. Menagerie breaks that rule in a lot of ways because each stop card that you have, as long as it's the first copy of it, doesn't really shut down the Menagerie drawer or keep you from drawing, so you can kind of keep adding payload to it indefinitely as long as it's different payload than what you've already got.
Mm-hmm. So this draw to X, and I mentioned earlier, like, it's not a fixed number with Menagerie.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing to take away from that fact is that the number can be more than 7.
Sure.
All of the other draw to X cards will draw you up to 7 or sometimes less.
Yeah.
Right? Menagerie can draw you up to more than 7 cards in hand. And I gotta tell you, having a lot of cards in your hand is really good.
Yeah, it tends to be. Now, drawing getting the Menagerie off so you draw 3 cards when you already have 7 in your hand or more than that is pretty impressive, and it's not always necessarily even like useful past the point that it's kind of more like a little Xbox achievement, how big of a Menagerie you can get off. But...
Oh, have you ever seen the Menagerie challenge?
No, what's that?
Oh, this was like forever ago. I made this challenge of like, how many times can you have a Menagerie play with nothing happening in between and have it get all the 3 cards?
Nice.
I made a video about it.
Oh,
Actually,
cool.
I should link that in the description.
Yeah, do
It's
it.
kind of cool. I made like a little baseline, and a couple people, they did more than the standard 12 Menageries in a row with nothing happening in between. Yeah,
Nice.
it was pretty sweet.
Oh, 12, like...
Yes. King's Court Menagerie, and then play 9
Oh,
Menageries.
so you're counting... Okay.
Yeah. I mean...
You're
can
counting those as separate Menageries.
Yeah, I mean, you can cap it at 10, and you can get that pretty easily.
Sure.
We need to push the envelope.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Hashtag push the envelope. But anyway, this number can get to be more than 7. And remember when I said draw to X decks were bad? That was mostly why. Because I want to have more than 6 or 7 cards in my hand. Menagerie allows me to do that. And so I want to increase the quantity of unique cards that I can put into my hand so I can increase that X.
Yeah.
And so what that allows me to do is put a higher quantity of Menageries in the deck and not have this situation where I have like 4 Menageries in my hand. I have to play 2 sad Menages at least before I get to do anything cool with my life. Because now that I have a larger deck and I have a significant number of Menageries, that actually makes the deck more consistent. It actually makes me able to play the payload I want in an optimal way, in a very efficient way. And so these are getting around some of the drawbacks of draw to X. Just by increasing X.
Yeah.
So good.
Totally.
Also, a lot of these other draw to X cards are expensive, or they're terminal.
Right. We kind of went into that with the low opportunity cost of Menagerie, setting itself apart from cards like Library.
Yeah, or like Minion and Diplomat. Like even then they can be non-terminal, but like Minion costs 5, and Diplomat, like if you're using it for draw to X for the actions, like you draw up to 5. That sucks, man. I don't want to do that. Gaining a Menagerie is super easy. Like every gainer that can gain action cards, like you can gain a Menagerie because it costs 3. That's super great. It's easy to get a lot of these bad boys.
Right, and it also comes into the just situation of how often you're going to put Menagerie into your deck, because when you put something like a Library into your deck, or Watchtower when you're intending to use it for draw, like you're kind of committed to this draw to X archetype, and different cards become bad for you. Like if you're committing yourself to playing around Cursed Village, Wharf suddenly becomes not such a great card, whereas the Menageries, like Adam said, can really just slot into this other deck you're building and give value to it without really defining the archetype.
It feels good, man.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to put a bow on this whole thing, like when I'm looking at Menagerie and I'm thinking, hey, I want to build a deck that uses Menagerie as its main source of draw, it's easy to ask myself a question like, what is the best deck I can build with one of everything? And maybe that's a starting question that leads you to the more precise question, which I think is kind of the crux of where we're going with this. What's the best deck that I can build with one of everything that I can't get out of my hand? Whether that's because I played the card or maybe had some way of discarding the card.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at playing like a village and a goons and then a menagerie, and a couple villages and a goons and a menagerie. Like that's just fine, right? I can get the villages and goons out of my hands if I have a little surplus village, and menagerie works great as a source of draw there. Or I can get a copper and a silver and a gold and an idol and a harvest and a hunting party and a mystic and...
You lost me at harvest. But,
so maybe that one's not so great. Hey, that harvest is going to make you $4, bro.
These unique cards that you're putting into your deck, bear in mind, they're not helping you just by virtue of being unique. They're just not harming you because they're unique.
Hey, but Workers' Village and Harvest with Menagerie?
Yeah, man.
Not trolling. That's not awful.
I mean...
We had to try real hard to get Harvest to work, and it's mediocre here. But
I think you have to put Bandit Fort in to make Harvest appealing, and have it be the only source of virtual coin.
Yeah, there you go. We did
if you put in Bandit Fort and made it the only source of money.
We did it, guys.
Yeah.
We did it. Yeah.
So, Menagerie.
Yeah.
I think this is about the time where we talk about the flavor of the card. What the hell? What is it? Like, what era is this set in? I'm so confused. I thought Dominion was like in medieval times, and now there's a modern zoo? That guy's wearing a t-shirt. Like, what is going on?
That could be a tunic.
Sure, but like, man, this...
There's an elephant butt in the picture. That's
a lot of weird stuff has happened. I guess they are kind of wearing like Renaissance Fest clothing, but like...
Yeah, you gotta zoom in really far to figure that out.
Okay, this is either... It's either inappropriately modern or extremely historically inaccurate. Because there are giraffes in this picture. And...
They're in the same enclosure as like this cow-looking thing.
Yeah.
Wait, there's multiple giraffes.
Right.
I'm sorry, I just lost respect for this artwork. It's supposed to have one of everything, and there's 3 frickin' giraffes.
Oh, yeah. It's got a failed menagerie in the picture.
Come on, man. Those giraffes better be non-terminal.
Yeah, you want to talk about really inappropriate art from the same expansion. Look at, somebody pointed out like how sad Fairgrounds looks. And Fairgrounds is one of those cards you look at and you kind of just like... You're really more thinking about how you can use it. It's got the mechanical wheels spinning in your brain, but if you actually look at the art, man, that is the most depressing Fairgrounds ever.
Yeah.
Looks so sad.
Yeah. What a sad menage.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear it. My child is screaming upstairs. It's a little bit distracting.
He is.
Yeah. So, we have a kingdom with Menagerie in it. You want to talk about it?
So the... first thing that I think we should do before we analyze the kingdom is read the cards that are in it.
Good call.
So, the cards that are going to be in this kingdom are Overlord, Develop, Ghost Town, Menagerie, Swindler, Workshop, Ironworks, Militia, Courtier, Ghost Ship. We have the Pilgrimage Event, and the Landmark Orchard. Once more for our audio-only listeners, we have Overlord, Develop, Ghost Town, Menagerie, Swindler, Workshop, Ironworks, Militia, Courtier, Ghost Ship, and we have the event Pilgrimage and the Landmark Orchard.
So I'm just seeing right away the obvious synergy between Ghost Town and Ghost Ship.
Yeah, totally. They've both got the ghosts. You can't get Ghost here, though.
Oh, dang it.
Yeah, so what else could we do? I think Menagerie is really good here.
I think Menagerie's great. I think there's incentive for you to build a little more. which is
Sure.
something that Menagerie likes because there's Ghost Ship to slow down your opponent, and also Orchard for an extra source of victory points.
Yeah, but it's interesting because the Ghost Town and the Militia too, for that matter, they're both like comparable attacks here, I'd say. They don't slow your opponent down very much because you have Menagerie.
Well, that's true. That's definitely true.
Yeah,
I wanted to point out that it's a little bit ironic that like we want to talk about Menagerie and we're using Orchard as an enabler because Orchard wants you to have 3 or more copies.
Yeah, well,
a lot of action cards.
But the reason that that's really going to jive here is because there are 2 or 3 cards here that are non-terminal actions that you can have Orchard points off of. So that's pretty good. Pilgrimage can be a pretty efficient way of getting you there.
Yeah.
Now, what's the end game look like of this deck? I have to wonder. I mean, the Swindlers are really important, I want to say.
I think they're important in the early game for sure. I think Sustained Ghost Ship is more along the lines of what I want to be doing in the end of the game. That's going to be slowing down someone who's greened a little bit too early. That's what kind of drives me to build a little more here.
Now, I'm going to agree with you, but not very strongly, because normally I would say that Ghost Ship it would be really important here because the idea of playing a Ghost Ship every turn is very damaging, but Menagerie really gets around a lot of it, so it
doesn't get around a lot of it. It gets you back to where you started if you drew a Menagerie.
Yes, but that's kind of enough. And don't get me wrong, it's not enough to say I don't want to do that thing that you're talking about. I totally want to be playing the Ghost Towns, but Ghost Ships or the Militias. I'm not actually convinced that
definitely Ghost Ship. Because the idea is that I've built this Menagerie deck, and let's say you haven't, okay, and I'm trying to slow you down. Okay. I want a lot of Menageries, and at some point I'm going to be prioritizing getting all of them with my Ironworks and my development, whatever.
Well, I'm assuming a mirror, so that's not going to happen in that case.
I understand in a mirror things get weird, but I'm compelled to build more because of being able to play Sustained Ghost Ships.
Yeah.
If I play a Ghost Ship on you, you're going to have a hard time getting back to your Menagerie. So if you have 2 or 3 Menageries in your deck, if I'm playing Militia, you're going to be playing your Menageries more often.
So if I didn't get enough Menageries, then yes, the Ghost Ship is going to hurt a lot.
Right, and, well, if you're not going for a Menagerie deck, then yes, the Ghost Ship hurts. If you are going for the Menagerie deck and you didn't get enough Menageries, that's a different problem.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, that's assuming your opponent and you are both going for them, in which case the Menagerie split is probably important, I want to say.
Usually is, yeah. It's kind of the main source of draw here. I guess you could go for Ghost Town, Ghost Ship, and maybe you eventually transition to that because you want to get Orchard points on both of those cards, and Ghost Town is a little bit awkward with Menagerie.
It is.
If you want more than 1 per turn.
Oh, you can't get it out of your hand.
Yeah, so you can have 2 of them, and you can play one, every other turn.
Yeah.
But then if you want to get those Orchard points...
Well, Ghost Town doesn't give you Orchard points. It's not an action.
Oh, well, would you look at that?
Yeah, there's this post on the Dominion Wiki talking about all the reasons that Night...
So anyway, I'm going to censor that out. But if you want to... if you want to put these other terminal cards in your deck... Ghost Town is the only village, and if you're only getting 1 every turn, you're putting them in your deck, and you have a lot of them, and if you want to play them to get them out of your hand, you can't really do that. So
yeah,
so awkward.
Well, you could develop them, yay! No, but that's terrible. So you could, there's also, I was gonna suggest that maybe you go for this idea of playing 2 or 3 Swindlers a turn, but now that I'm looking at the Ghost Town being kind of a crappy village for that,
I don't know, the more I think about it, maybe the Menagerie split isn't super important, because you're not going to get very far on this board with Menagerie as your only source of draw. You get 2 provinces, you're kind of boned, right?
Yeah, I mean,
there's no way
true.
to get the duplicates out of your hand, and provinces is where a lot of your points are going to come from. I feel like Ghost Town Ghost Ship is where your bread and butter is going to come from. Menagerie is just going to help you get there. It's going to give you a boost.
That might be the case. I do think that I don't know. I do think the Menageries are going to be important, and
they are,
I think that you're going to keep gaining them until they're gone.
I'm not sure about that one.
Well, it's also because it's going to be so easy to do. Like, you're going to be getting an Ironworks at some point. So,
I'm going to open with it.
well, okay, that's actually what I wanted to get at is what are we talking about with the opener?
Ironworks Develop.
I was going to suggest that as one of the things, but Militia Develop is probably decent too. The thing is that like a discard attack is really strong to open with in the beginning, and so is a gainer though. If you're first player, the Militia gets a little better, I'd say. And if you do collide it with the Develop, you get to top deck Ghost Town Menagerie or Ghost Town
Ghost Ship.
or Ghost Town Ghost Ship, Ghost Town or Ghost Ship, or maybe you top deck a Courtier depending what you're doing. I don't know, but you could also argue could you open with an Overlord and that be good? I don't know, maybe on a 3/4.
When Develop collides with the 4 cost, it doesn't matter what the 4 cost is.
Yeah.
I should point out that if you develop something and choose to gain a Ghost Town, it does not go into your hand. It goes on top of your deck.
You can't choose?
Because of rules.
You can't choose to put it in your hand instead?
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh.
So that's cool. I think.
Well, it makes it a little worse. I don't think it makes the Ghost Town a different card on the board.
Right, just
it makes
a
it
little
worse.
rule thing. Yeah. I mean, I think Overlord's okay. Opening with Overlord turn 2 is usually pretty good, but like, what am I looking for that costs 5 that I wouldn't be able to open with already? There's no Trasher. There's a Ghost Ship, but like if you want to puke on your opponent, you might as well get the Militia. So like, I'm not super warm on opening with the Overlord, and in fact, having the flexibility is something I don't value for a little bit.
Well, the flexibility I like because I like that you can either play it as another copy of Develop if you don't draw it with your Develop, or if you do draw it with your Develop, you can play it as an Ironworks and not get so hosed. So it lets you have 2 Develops in your deck, so to speak, without the risk of having them collide.
I understand that, and yes, that puts you in a little bit better of a sitch. On the other hand, I know I'm very likely to be playing it as an Ironworks anyway.
The other
regardless.
Yeah. I mean,
I would just rather like get those cards in my deck and then maybe buy and gain some other stuff. I don't know. Maybe the Overlord's fine. I don't think about it.
The other piece of weirdness is I think we all kind of have our Dominion common sense enough to know that the Swindler attack is important and it hurts the most the earlier you get it.
Sure, but
so when do you get that?
I'm going to open Develop with the idea of trashing an estate with it and top decking a Swindler.
Yeah, probably.
That comes straight from our Develop episode, actually.
This is true. Terminal space gets really tight here at a certain point, and it happens more often than not. There's a lot of non-terminal options, but all the stuff you really want to be doing is terminal, so we get into some weirdness.
Yeah. Hashtag some weirdness.
Yeah.
But I still like the Ironworks opening over the Militia opening, but maybe Overlord is fine.
I am going to say that the Militia has a slight edge if you go first.
I'm going to say I like the Ironworks in either case.
I'm not very convinced of what I just said, though. So if it turns out that the Ironworks is better either way, I'm not going to be super shocked, but I am going to advocate for the Militia as first player.
My priorities aren't buying expensive cards. My priorities are trashing my estates and gaining things with my Ironworks. That's why I open with that in the first place. If I get hit with a discard attack, whatever. And in fact, that actually draws me towards the Overlord, because like if I'm just paying off debt with whatever pennies I have, I don't even care. If I see you with the Militia, I might be tempted to get the Overlord instead of the whatever the Ironworks.
Yeah, there's a degree of reacting to your opponent's second player advantage.
But then that suggests maybe the Overlord is just better anyway.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, a lot of the time opening with an Overlord is better than whatever else you were going to do, so you should just do it.
Yeah, there's the Overlord episode, isn't there?
Yeah, right.
Whoopsie!
Sure.
Right. Well, I think that's about all I have to say about this kingdom for
same here. Let us know what you would do in the comments.
Yeah, I'm going to try and interact with people again.
Yeah.
No promises.
He's ready to get hurt again.
No promises. It's still kind of difficult for me to do things.
Sure.
But I'm going to try and do the things. So you can hit us up on the Discord, YouTube comments section. You can go to adamhorton.com. There's a blog, all of our contact information.
Yeah.
You can check out links to everything that we've said there. We want to hear from you, and Jake has been pretty good about talking back to you. Me less so, but I'm going to do my best.
Totally.
And yeah, thanks for listening, and thanks for your patience.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, for sure. Making luck.
Defo.
A Dominion podcast.
Agreeable podcast. Dominion podcast.
Yeah. You said you feel medicated. Is that bad?
It's kind of neutral. I feel very calm.
Hey, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, like anybody listening who takes meds, whether they're sleeping meds or ADD meds,
Just
et cetera.
prescription drugs.
Yeah, stuff like that. Whether or not they're yours, you know what I'm talking about.
So there was one time when I was in college. It was I had a summer job working at Bob Evans waiting tables.
Yeah.
And my last day of my fourth and last summer there.
Sure.
I cut myself. I did something stupid. I had 2 glasses in each hand, and I collided them together, and one of them shattered. Cut my hand. I had to go to the emergency room.
Yeah, just like when you collide terminals in Dominion.
It's basically the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, that happened to me.
Yeah.
So I had to go to the emergency room. I came back, and I'll skip over the important part to just say that I ended up closing that night because I wanted to make some money. I had this big poofy thing around my finger.
Nice.
And my manager let me wear the hospital bracelet. The other closer just didn't feel like doing anything, so I took all the tables. I did not mention it to a single customer. I made amazing money that night.
Nice.
So if you want to make good tips, that's how you do it.
Injure yourself. Yeah.
Or at least pretend that you're injured.
Right, for money.
Yeah.
So
anyway, the young woman that I was dating at the time, who I now have a particular name for that's not flattering and that I will not repeat on this podcast.
He didn't marry this one, by the way.
Wait, I can say it and just bleep it out. I call her. So anyway, that's because she's a and she's a. So she's earned that name.
Well, you don't know she still is. I mean, you haven't talked to her in a while. Maybe she's completely different now.
Okay, you have a point, but I'm still going to call her that. Okay. In any case, I got back, and she actually was going on a date with another guy that she cut short so she could go visit me in the emergency room. We were together
really
at the time.
Nice of her.
Yeah, we were together at the time, so
yeah.
I'm glad we're not in that relationship. My wife is amazing. So anyway, we're at the restaurant, and people are like, "Oh, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, they gave me this prescription." And she looks at the prescription, and it's for painkillers, and she's like, "Wow, I can get you $20 a pill for those." And I had a prescription for like 10 pills. And I'm like, "Are you serious right now?" She wanted me to sign the prescription over to her so she could sell the pills for money, and she knew people. They're like,
"Are you serious? $20 a pill?" No, yeah.
That apparently was the street price, and the prescription would have cost much less than that to fill. I did not give her the prescription. I gave it to my mom, who ended up not filling it. My mom's a CNP.
Yeah. Oh, no.
No, she ended up not filling the prescription, but
yeah.
I trusted her to know what to do with drugs, and I didn't want them because I don't. Anyway.
Yeah, speaking of moms, somebody on the Dominion Discord was talking.